Captain Marcus Chun had seen many strange things during his 15 years exploring the Outer Rim territories, but nothing quite like this. The distress signal had led his cargo ship Steady Hand to a derelict research station floating in the void between star systems. What he found inside would change everything he thought he knew about First Contact. The station's corridors were dark except for emergency lighting that cast eerie red shadows on the walls. Marcus moved carefully through the damaged sections, his scanner beeping softly as it detected life signs. His crew stayed behind on the ship, ready to extract him if things went wrong. The station had been abandoned for weeks, according to the logs they'd managed to access. In the deepest section of the station, Marcus found her. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old in human terms, though her species was clearly not human. Her skin had a subtle blue tint that seemed to shimmer under the emergency lights. Two small horns curved back from her forehead, and her eyes were larger than a human child's, colored like deep ocean water. She wore a torn research facility jumpsuit that was far too big for her small frame. When she saw Marcus, she didn't run or scream. Instead, she looked up at him with those impossibly large eyes and spoke in perfect English, though her voice carried a strange musical quality. "Please pretend you're my father," she said quietly. "They're coming back soon." Marcus lowered his weapon slowly. His translator wasn't even active, but somehow he understood every word perfectly. The child's English was flawless, without any accent he could identify. It was as if she had grown up speaking the language. "Who's coming back?" Marcus asked, kneeling down to her level. The universal translator built into his suit remained silent, suggesting she was actually speaking human language rather than having her words translated. "The bad scientists," she whispered, glancing toward the corridor behind him. "They took everyone else to the lower levels. They said they needed to run more tests. But I hid when they came for me." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He'd heard rumors about illegal research operations in the Outer Rim, places where desperate scientists conducted experiments that would never be approved by the Galactic Ethics Board. The kind of places that made even hardened smugglers nervous. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Zara," she replied. "At least, that's what the nice scientists called me. The bad ones just used numbers." "How long have you been here, Zara?" "I don't know. A long time. The nice scientists were trying to help me learn about humans. They said I was special because I could understand your language without the translation machines. But then, the bad ones came and made them all go away." Marcus looked around the small storage room where Zara had been hiding. Food wrappers and empty water containers suggested she'd been there for several days, maybe a week. His scanner showed no immediate threats, but that could change quickly. "Why did you ask me to pretend to be your father?" Marcus asked. Zara's expression grew sad. "The bad scientists always ask about parents. They want to know where we come from, who made us. If they think you're my father, maybe they won't hurt you. Maybe they'll think you came to take me home." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just illegal research. This was something far worse. Zara wasn't just any alien child. She was something the researchers considered valuable enough to risk everything for. "Where are you really from, Zara?" "I don't remember much from before," she said, sitting down on a storage crate. "I remember a big ship, and lots of others like me. But different. Some were bigger, some smaller. Some had different colored skin or different horns. We were traveling somewhere safe, I think." "What happened to your ship?" "It broke. There was a big fight with some bad people who wanted to hurt us. The nice scientists found me floating in an escape pod and brought me here. They said they wanted to help me find my family, but they needed to understand my people better first." Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Refugee ships were common enough in the Outer Rim, usually carrying civilians fleeing war zones or natural disasters. But most refugee species didn't have the natural ability to learn human language without translation technology. That made Zara's people incredibly valuable to the wrong kind of researchers. "The nice scientists taught me about humans," Zara continued. "They showed me videos of human families. I liked watching the ones about fathers taking care of their children. That's why I asked you to pretend. If the bad scientists come back, they might think you're here to protect me." "What makes you think I won't hurt you?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her logic. Zara smiled for the first time since he'd found her. "You knelt down when you talked to me. The bad scientists never kneel down. They always stand up tall to make themselves scary. And you asked my name. The bad ones don't care about names. Marcus realized this child had learned to read human behavior with remarkable accuracy. Her survival had depended on understanding the difference between people who meant her harm and those who might help her. The fact that she'd asked him to pretend to be her father suggested she was desperately hoping he fell into the second category. Zara, I need you to listen to me carefully, Marcus said. I'm not one of the bad scientists, and I'm not going to let them hurt you. But I need to know more about what they were doing here. Can you show me where they kept you? Zara nodded and stood up. It's down the main corridor. But we have to be quiet. Sometimes they leave monitors running even when they're not here. She led him through the darkened station with the confidence of someone who knew every hiding spot and safe route. Marcus noticed that despite her apparent youth, Zara moved with careful precision, avoiding areas where the floor might creak or where sensor arrays might detect movement. The laboratory section of the station was larger than Marcus had expected. Banks of computers lined the walls, most of them still running despite the apparent abandonment. Examination tables sat in the center of the room, equipped with restraints that made Marcus's stomach turn. This was definitely not a legitimate research facility. They brought different ones here every few days, Zara explained quietly. Always children like me, but from different ships. They wanted to know why we could learn so fast. They said it wasn't normal. Marcus examined the computer systems while Zara stayed near the door to watch for trouble. The research logs he accessed painted a disturbing picture. Zara's people weren't just naturally gifted language learners. They were something much more extraordinary and much more dangerous to those who would exploit them. According to the files, Zara's species possessed what the researchers called cognitive adaptation syndrome. Their brains could rapidly restructure themselves to understand and process new forms of communication, technology, and social structures. It wasn't just language they could master quickly. It was entire cultures. The implications were staggering. A species that could adapt to any civilization they encountered would be invaluable to military organizations, trading companies, or anyone else who needed to quickly establish relationships with new alien cultures. They would also be incredibly dangerous if they ever decided humanity was a threat. Zara, Marcus said carefully. How many of your people were brought here? Lots, she replied. But most of them were taken to the lower levels when the bad scientists came. I only avoided it because I was small enough to hide in the ventilation system. Marcus felt a growing sense of urgency. If there were others still in the facility, he couldn't just rescue Zara and leave them behind. But he also couldn't take on an entire research operation by himself. He needed help, and he needed it fast. Can you show me where the others are being kept? Zara hesitated. It's dangerous down there. The bad scientists have lots of security, and the others might not trust you at first. They've been hurt for a long time. I understand, but I can't leave them here. Why? Zara asked, tilting her head in a gesture that seemed very human despite her alien features. You don't know us. We're not your responsibility. Marcus paused, considering his answer. The truth was complicated. Part of it was simple human decency. Part of it was the growing realization that Zara's people might represent something unprecedented in the galaxy. But, mostly, it was the way this young girl had looked at him and asked him to pretend to be her father. There was trust in that request, and vulnerability, and a desperate hope that someone might finally care enough to protect her. Because that's what fathers do, he said simply. They protect their children. Zara's eyes widened, and, for a moment, Marcus thought she might cry. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and nodded firmly. Okay, she said. I'll show you where they are. But first, you need to know something important about my people. We don't just learn fast. We share what we learn with each other. The bad scientists don't know this yet, but every one of us they captured knows everything the others have learned. What do you mean? I mean, Zara said with a small, determined smile. We've been studying them just as much as they've been studying us. And we've been waiting for someone like you to come help us escape. Marcus realized that he'd stumbled into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. Zara's people weren't just victims. They were preparing for something, and they'd been using their captivity to gather intelligence about their captors. The question was whether they saw humans as potential allies or just another threat to be understood and potentially eliminated. As they prepared to venture into the deeper levels of the station, the elevator down to the lower levels moved with painful slowness, and Marcus found himself studying Zara more carefully during the descent. She stood perfectly still, but her large eyes darted constantly between the floor indicator and the emergency controls. Her body language suggested someone who had learned to be ready for danger at any moment. "How many others are down there?" Marcus asked quietly. 17. Zara replied without hesitation. "Ages from 8 to 16 in human years. The bad scientists prefer younger ones because our abilities are stronger when we're still developing." Marcus felt anger building in his chest. "What exactly have they been doing to you?" "Learning tests. Memory tests. They show us new languages and see how fast we can understand them. They show us human cultural videos and ask us questions. They take samples." Zara's voice remained steady, but Marcus caught the slight tremor when she mentioned samples. "Blood samples. And other things. They want to understand how our brains work differently." The nice scientists were gentle about it, but the bad ones. She didn't finish the sentence. The elevator reached the lower level with a soft chime that seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. The doors opened to reveal a corridor lined with what looked like holding cells, each equipped with observation windows and electronic locks. Emergency lighting cast long shadows between the cells, and Marcus could see movement in several of them. "They're all awake," Zara whispered. "We don't sleep much anymore. It's safer to stay alert." As they moved down the corridor, faces appeared at the observation windows. Marcus saw children and teenagers with the same blue-tinted skin as Zara, though their horn configurations varied. Some had single horns, others had multiple smaller ones, and a few had what looked like bony ridges instead of distinct horns. Their eyes all shared the same deep ocean color, and Marcus felt the weight of their collective gaze. "They're all watching me," he murmured. "They're deciding whether to trust you," Zara explained. "We share information, remember? They can sense what I've learned about you, but they need to make their own judgments." Marcus stopped in front of the first cell. Inside, a boy who appeared to be about 14 sat cross-legged on a simple cot. His horns were longer than Zara's, curving back in elegant spirals, and his eyes held an intelligence that seemed far older than his apparent age. "Hello," Marcus said simply. The boy studied him for a long moment, then spoke in English that was as perfect as Zara's. "You're the one who told Zara that fathers protect their children." "Yes. Do you have children of your own?" Marcus hesitated. "No, I never had the chance." The boy nodded slowly. "But you understand the concept of protection nonetheless." "Interesting. Most of the researchers view us as resources rather than individuals deserving protection." "I'm not a researcher. I'm a cargo hauler who received your distress signal." "Our distress signal?" The boy's expression sharpened. "We didn't send any distress signals. The researchers disabled all long-range communications weeks ago." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If Zara's people hadn't sent the signal that led him here, then who had? And why? "There's something else you need to know," Zara said quietly. "The bad scientists didn't just leave randomly. They're coming back with more people. Buyers. Buyers. They're going to sell us," the boy in the cell explained. "We overheard their communications. There are military contractors, research corporations, and private collectors willing to pay enormous sums for members of our species. The auction is scheduled for tomorrow." Marcus realized he'd walked into a trap. The distress signal had been sent by the researchers themselves, designed to lure in someone exactly like him. A small-time cargo hauler with no official ties, operating in the outer rim where disappearances were common. They probably planned to sell him along with the children, or simply eliminate him as a witness. "How many researchers are coming back?" Marcus asked. "At least 12, Zara replied. "Plus security teams and the buyers. Maybe 30 people total." Marcus ran the numbers in his head. His ship was fast but lightly armed. His crew consisted of 3 people, none of them combat specialists. Against 30 armed individuals with military-grade equipment, their chances were essentially zero in a direct confrontation. "There might be another way," the boy in the cell said, as if reading Marcus's thoughts. "Our abilities aren't just limited to learning languages and cultures. We can also understand technology, including security systems." "You mean you can break out?" "We've been able to break out for days," Zara admitted. "But We've been waiting for the right moment. If we escape too early, they would just capture us again. And there's nowhere for us to run on this station. Marcus felt a growing respect for these children. They weren't helpless victims waiting for rescue. They were strategic thinkers who had been planning their own liberation while gathering intelligence about their captors. What did you have in mind? He asked. A coordinated escape during the auction, the boy explained. When all the buyers and security personnel are gathered in one place, focused on the merchandise, that's when we strike. Strike how? Zara smiled. And, for the first time, Marcus caught a glimpse of something predatory in her expression. It was a reminder that despite her childlike appearance, she belonged to a species that had survived whatever catastrophe had destroyed their ship and scattered them across the galaxy. We've learned a lot about human technology during our captivity, she said, including how to override station life support systems, disable artificial gravity, and lock down entire sections of the facility. You're talking about taking control of the entire station. We're talking about survival, the boy corrected. The researchers planned to separate us, sell us to different buyers across the galaxy. Once separated, we would never see each other again. Our species is social. We need contact with our own kind to maintain our mental health. Marcus began to understand the full scope of what these children had endured. Not only had they been subjected to invasive testing, but they faced a future of complete isolation from their own people. For a species that shared information and experiences the way Zara described, such separation would be psychological torture. What do you need from me? Marcus asked. Access to the main computer core, Zara replied. And someone the researchers will underestimate. They think humans are technologically inferior to most spacefaring species. They won't expect a cargo hauler to pose a serious threat. They're wrong about that, Marcus said grimly. We know, the boy said with something that might have been a smile. We've been studying human history through the station's database. Your species has a remarkable talent for turning disadvantages into advantages, especially when protecting others. Marcus felt a surge of pride at the observation, even as he realized the magnitude of what they were planning. What happens after we take the station? You still need somewhere safe to go. We've been working on that too, Zara said. There are refugee settlements in the Centauri cluster that accept displaced species without asking too many questions. But we need transportation. My ship can carry maybe 6 people comfortably, 8 if we're lucky. There are 17 of you. 18, the boy corrected. You're one of us now. You chose to protect us, which makes you family. The casual way he said it caught Marcus off guard. These children had latched onto him with a trust and acceptance that was both humbling and terrifying. They were offering him something he'd never had, a sense of belonging, of being needed for more than just his skills as a pilot. My ship isn't big enough for all of us, Marcus said carefully. We know. That's why we're going to take one of theirs. Zara led him to a wall-mounted display that showed the station's docking bay. 3 ships were currently attached. Marcus's cargo hauler, a sleek research vessel, and a larger transport ship that could easily accommodate 20 passengers. The transport belongs to one of the buyer groups, Zara explained. They brought it to carry us away after the auction. We're going to borrow it instead. Marcus studied the layout, noting the security checkpoints and patrol routes. The researchers will try to stop us. The researchers will be dealing with a station-wide emergency, the boy said. Life support failures, gravity fluctuations, communication blackouts. They'll be too busy trying to regain control of the station to chase after a single ship. You've thought of everything. We've had plenty of time to plan, Zara said with a touch of bitterness. And we've been motivated by the knowledge that failure means a lifetime of captivity. Marcus made his decision. Tell me what you need me to do. Over the next hour, Zara and the others outlined their plan in detail. It was complex but elegant, relying on precise timing and the researchers' overconfidence in their security systems. Marcus would return to his ship and wait for the buyers to arrive. During the confusion of the auction, he would access the main computer core and begin uploading the virus programs that Zara's people had created. The virus would systematically shut down non-essential systems while appearing to be random malfunctions. In the chaos that followed, the children would break out of their cells and make their way to the docking bay. Marcus would meet them there with control of the transport ship and They would all escape before the researchers could mount an effective response. What about the buyers? Marcus asked. Some of them are probably criminals, but others might just be legitimate researchers who don't know what they're walking into. We've considered that, the boy replied. The virus will trigger evacuation protocols for all non-essential personnel. Anyone who isn't directly involved in holding us prisoner will be directed to escape pods and emergency shuttles. Only the worst offenders will be left to deal with the full consequences of their actions. Marcus was impressed by the moral sophistication of their plan. These children had managed to design an escape that would punish their captors without unnecessarily endangering innocent people. It was a level of ethical thinking that many adult humans wouldn't have managed under similar circumstances. There's one more thing, Zara said as Marcus spent the rest of the night aboard his ship, ostensibly running routine maintenance, while actually studying the station's technical specifications that Zara had helped him download. His crew remained unaware of the real situation, believing they were simply waiting for station personnel to return and authorize their cargo pickup. The first buyer ships began arriving at dawn, station time. Marcus watched through his viewport as sleek vessels docked one by one, each bearing the markings of different organizations. Some he recognized as legitimate research corporations, others as military contractors, and a few bore no identification at all. The sight of so many ships gathering for what amounted to a slave auction filled him with cold rage. Captain, his first officer Elena called from the bridge. Station Control is requesting all civilian vessels to maintain dock while they conduct some kind of inspection. They're being pretty insistent about it. Roger that, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. Tell them we're happy to cooperate. In reality, the lockdown was exactly what they'd expected. The researchers weren't taking any chances with witnesses during their illegal auction. Any civilian ships in the area would be held until the transaction was complete, then either recruited into silence or eliminated entirely. Marcus made his way to the bridge, where his small crew was monitoring communications. Elena, his first officer, was a competent pilot but not particularly curious about their more questionable cargo runs. His engineer, Torres, was brilliant with machines but preferred to stay in the engine room. His medic and communications officer, Dr. Reyes, was the only one who might ask uncomfortable questions, but she was currently running medical checks on their cargo hold and wouldn't be on the bridge for another hour. Any word on how long this inspection might take? Marcus asked, settling into his captain's chair. They're being vague, Elena replied. Something about verifying cargo manifests and checking for contraband. Could be hours. Marcus nodded and pulled up the station schematic on his personal tablet, pretending to review their docking procedures while actually memorizing the route to the main computer core. According to Zara's intelligence, the auction would begin in approximately 3 hours, giving him a narrow window to position himself correctly. His tablet chimed with an incoming message on a frequency that shouldn't have existed. When he opened it, he found a simple text communication. The family is ready. Father should begin his walk soon. See, Marcus felt a mixture of pride and terror at seeing himself referred to as father in writing. These children had embraced him so completely that it felt like a sacred responsibility. He couldn't let them down. Elena, I'm going to stretch my legs on the station for a bit, Marcus announced, standing up. Monitor communications, and let me know if anything changes. Want company? This place gives me the creeps. I'll be fine. Just need some air that hasn't been recycled 1,000 times. Marcus made his way off the ship and into the station proper, carrying a toolkit that concealed the portable computer interface Zara had provided. The corridors were busier than they'd been the day before, with security personnel and well-dressed individuals who were obviously buyers moving between different sections. He overheard fragments of conversation as he walked, and what he heard made his blood run cold. The buyers weren't just interested in Zara's people for their linguistic abilities. They were discussing military applications, intelligence gathering, and something called cultural infiltration protocols. These children were being sold as weapons. The main computer core was located in the station's central hub, protected by multiple security checkpoints that would normally be impossible for a civilian to access. But Zara had provided him with security codes that her people had observed and memorized during their captivity. The The researchers had underestimated their prisoner's ability to gather intelligence. Marcus approached the first checkpoint with his heart pounding, but the stolen codes worked perfectly. The security system recognized him as a maintenance technician and granted him access to the restricted areas. As he moved deeper into the station's core systems, he marveled at how thoroughly Zara's people had penetrated their captor's security. The computer core itself was a massive chamber filled with processing banks and data storage units. Marcus found the primary access terminal and connected Zara's interface device, watching as alien code began flowing across the screen. The virus program was elegant in its simplicity, designed to look like random system failures while systematically disabling the station's ability to contain or pursue escapees. As the upload progressed, Marcus received another message. Buyers are gathering. Show begins soon. Father should find his place. Z. Marcus made his way toward the auction location, a large conference room in the station's commercial section. Through the viewing windows, he could see dozens of people taking seats around a central platform where Zara and the others would presumably be displayed like merchandise. The sight made him sick, but it also strengthened his resolve. He positioned himself in a maintenance corridor that provided access to the room's environmental controls. From here, he could monitor the auction and activate the next phase of their plan when the time was right. His tablet showed the virus upload was nearly complete, with most of the station's critical systems now compromised. The auction began with a presentation by the lead researcher, a thin man with cold eyes who spoke about Zara's people as if they were advanced technology rather than living beings. He described their cognitive adaptation abilities in clinical terms, outlining potential applications for military intelligence, corporate espionage, and diplomatic manipulation. Marcus watched through the environmental control access as one by one, the children were brought onto the platform for examination. They appeared terrified and helpless, but Marcus caught subtle glances between them that suggested they were communicating in ways their captors didn't understand. They were coordinating their own escape while playing the role of helpless victims. When Zara was brought onto the platform, Marcus felt a surge of protective fury. She looked so small and vulnerable standing there while buyers discussed her potential value in credits and utility. But when she briefly looked in his direction, he caught a quick wink that reminded him this was all performance. She was ready. The lead researcher was in the middle of describing Zara's language acquisition abilities when the first system failure occurred. The lights flickered, then went out completely for several seconds before emergency lighting activated. A moment later, the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing several buyers to stumble. Minor technical difficulties, the researcher announced, though Marcus could see sweat beading on his forehead. Please remain calm while our technical staff addresses these issues. But the issues multiplied rapidly. The ventilation system began producing strange noises. Communication panels sparked and went dark. Temperature controls started cycling randomly between hot and cold. Within minutes, the entire station seemed to be falling apart around them. Even if they suspected the children were involved, they had no way to prove it or coordinate a response. At the docking bay, Marcus found Zara and 3 others already working on the transport ship's access codes. They had somehow acquired security uniforms and looked like maintenance workers rather than escaped prisoners. When Zara saw him, she smiled with genuine relief. Father, you made it. The others are coming, but we need to get the ship ready for immediate departure. Marcus boarded the transport ship and was amazed by its sophistication. This was a vessel designed for long-range travel with full life support, entertainment systems, and comfortable quarters for multiple passengers. It was exactly what they needed for the journey to the refugee settlements. Over the next 20 minutes, the remaining children arrived in small groups, each having navigated the chaos-filled station through different routes. They moved with the confidence of people who had planned for every contingency, and Marcus realized he was witnessing the execution of one of the most sophisticated escape plans he'd ever seen. The last to arrive was the boy from the first cell Marcus had visited. He carried a data storage device that he handed to Zara with obvious satisfaction. All the research data, he announced. Everything they learned about us, plus evidence of their illegal activities. The Galactic Ethics Board will be very interested in this information. Excellent work, Zara replied. Then, turned to Marcus. Are we ready for departure? Marcus checked the ship systems one final time. Everything was green, and the docking clamps were already retracting as station automated systems continued their malfunction sequence. We're ready. Everyone strap in. As the transport ship pulled away from the station, Marcus could see escape pods launching from various docking ports as buyers and non-essential personnel evacuated. The researchers and security teams remaining aboard would have to deal with progressively worsening system failures that would keep them busy for days. Where to, family? Marcus asked, settling into the pilot's chair. The Centauri refugee settlements, Zara replied from the co-pilot's seat. But not directly. We should make a few stops first, let things calm down. Agreed. Torres, Elena, and Dr. Reyes are still back on the station with my ship, Marcus said, suddenly, remembering his crew. They'll be fine, the boy from the first cell assured him. 3 weeks into their journey toward the Centauri refugee settlements, Marcus discovered that raising 18 alien children was considerably more complex than rescuing them had been. The transport ship, while spacious, had become a floating classroom, workshop, and occasional diplomatic forum as the children continued their rapid adaptation to human technology and culture. Father Marcus, called Kresh, a 15-year-old whose horn configuration resembled a crown more than the simple curves of the younger children. We need to discuss the supply situation. Marcus looked up from the navigation console, where he'd been plotting their next stop. Kresh had naturally emerged as something of a leader among the children, though they seemed to operate more as a collective than following traditional hierarchy. What's the problem? Not a problem exactly. An opportunity. Kresh gestured toward a holographic display showing local star charts. The Vega trading station is only 2 days out of our way. They have supplies we need, and, more importantly, they have information brokers. Information brokers? Zara joined the conversation, moving with the quiet confidence she'd developed since their escape. We've been analyzing the data we stole from the research station. The illegal operation was much larger than we initially thought. There are at least 6 other facilities conducting similar experiments on our people. Marcus felt his blood run cold. 6 more stations full of children like you. Children, teenagers, and some adults, confirmed Temra, a girl whose horns had grown in an intricate spiral pattern. The researchers were building a network of facilities, each specializing in different aspects of our abilities. Language acquisition, cultural adaptation, technological integration, and... She paused, looking uncomfortable. And what? Marcus prompted gently. Combat applications, Kresh finished. They were trying to create soldiers who could infiltrate any enemy society and blend in perfectly. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The rescue mission he'd thought was complete was actually just the beginning. Dozens, possibly hundreds of Zara's people were still being held across the galaxy, and now he was the only human who knew the full scope of the operation. The information brokers at Vega Station specialize in tracking illegal research operations, Zara explained. If we can provide them with the data we stole, they might be able to help us locate the other facilities. Marcus studied the faces of his adopted children and saw a determination that both impressed and worried him. You're talking about mounting rescue operations against 6 heavily fortified research stations. That's not a job for one transport ship and a retired cargo hauler. We know, Temra said quietly. That's why we need to contact the Galactic Ethics Board, the Independent Traders Alliance, and possibly even some of the more ethical military contractors. What the researchers are doing violates so many interspecies treaties that intervention would be legally justified. The problem, added another child whose name Marcus was still learning, is that some of the buyers from our auction were representatives of legitimate organizations. Military contracts, research universities, even some government agencies. They may not have known the children were being held illegally, but they were still willing to purchase sentient beings. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. When Zara had asked him to pretend to be her father, he'd thought it would involve protecting 18 children from immediate danger. Now he was realizing that being their father meant taking on a crusade that could span years and involve challenging some of the most powerful organizations in the galaxy. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. A careful campaign, Kresh replied. We start by documenting everything we know and getting it to the right authorities. Then, we begin systematic raids on the research facilities, working with legitimate organizations wherever possible. And when we encounter organizations that aren't legitimate, the children exchanged glances that Marcus had learned to recognize as their nonverbal communication method. After a moment, Zara spoke for the group. We've been studying human history and military tactics, Father. We understand that sometimes protecting the innocent requires confronting those who would harm them. We're prepared for that reality. Marcus looked at these remarkable young beings and saw something that both amazed and frightened him. They weren't just victims who had survived trauma. They were becoming something new, a fusion of their natural cognitive abilities with human concepts of justice and protection. The results could reshape galactic politics in ways nobody could predict. All right, he said finally. We'll make the stop at Vega Station. But we proceed carefully. No unnecessary risks, and no actions that can't be undone if things go wrong. The next 2 days were spent in intensive preparation. The children organized the stolen research data into comprehensive reports that documented not only the illegal experiments, but also the network of buyers and suppliers that made such operations possible. Marcus found himself constantly amazed by their ability to synthesize complex information and present it in ways that different audiences could understand. Vega Station turned out to be a massive commercial hub that serviced traders from across 3-star systems. Its neutral status and strict privacy laws made it a haven for information brokers, freelance investigators, and others who operated in the gray areas between legitimate business and outright criminality. Marcus docked their transport ship under falsified registration codes that the children had somehow generated during the journey. As they disembarked, he noticed that each of his young charges had subtly altered their appearance using cosmetics and clothing to make their alien features less distinctive. They moved through the crowded station corridors like seasoned operatives rather than refugee children. The information broker they sought operated from a small office in the station's commercial district. Marina Volkov was a middle-aged woman with cybernetic implants that allowed her to interface directly with data networks, and a reputation for discretion that had made her wealthy despite the questionable nature of her clientele. Captain Chun, she said as they entered her office, somehow knowing Marcus's name despite their falsified registration. You and your interesting family have been making waves in some very quiet corners of the galaxy. Word travels fast, Marcus replied carefully. Faster than you might expect when it involves the destruction of a multi-billion credit research operation and the escape of 18 extremely valuable prisoners. Marina's cybernetic I word as it focused on Zara. Though I understand valuable is an offensive term when applied to sentient beings. It is, Zara confirmed, stepping forward with the confidence of someone much older than her apparent age. We have information that you might find commercially interesting, assuming you occasionally work for causes rather than just profit. Marina smiled, and Marcus caught a glimpse of genuine warmth beneath her business persona. I've been tracking the research network you escaped from for almost 2 years. Every time I got close to exposing one facility, they would shut it down and relocate before authorities could respond. What do you have that might change that pattern? The next hour was spent reviewing the stolen data, with the children explaining the research network structure and operations while Marina verified information through her own intelligence sources. Marcus found himself relegated to the role of observer as his adopted family demonstrated negotiation skills that would have impressed veteran diplomats. This is unprecedented, Marina finally announced. With this data, we can coordinate simultaneous raids on all 6 remaining facilities before they have time to relocate. But it will require cooperation between multiple enforcement agencies and possibly some unofficial assistance. What kind of unofficial assistance? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The kind that doesn't ask permission from bureaucrats before rescuing children, Marina replied bluntly. Some of these facilities are located in territories where the local authorities are either corrupt or deliberately looking the other way. Official channels would take months to achieve anything, assuming they achieve anything at all. You're talking about vigilante action. I'm talking about justice when the legal system has failed, Zara interjected. Our people are suffering while politicians debate jurisdiction and procedure. We can't wait for perfect solutions. Marcus realized that this was the moment when his simple desire to protect these children would either expand into something much larger or end with him walking away from a fight that was bigger than he could handle. Looking at the faces of his adopted family, he saw hope, determination, and an absolute faith that he would stand with them regardless of the personal cost. "What would you need from us?" he asked Marina. "Access to your ship, and crew for transportation and logistics. The children's unique abilities for intelligence gathering and technical infiltration, and someone with military experience to coordinate field operations." "I'm not military. I'm a cargo hauler." Marina's cybernetic eye fixed on him with obvious amusement. "Captain Chun, you just conducted one of the most sophisticated rescue operations in recent galactic history, using minimal resources and no casualties among friendly forces. Either you're a natural tactical genius, or you have training you haven't mentioned." Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks. "I may have served briefly in the Colonial Defense Force before I became a traitor." "How briefly?" Kresh asked with obvious interest. 15 years. But that was a long time ago. And what was your rank when you left the service?" Marina pressed. Marcus sighed, realizing his past was about to become much more relevant than he'd hoped. "Major, I commanded a reconnaissance battalion specializing in operations behind enemy lines." The silence that followed was broken by Zara's delighted laughter. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the refugee settlement at New Harmony, watching as the last transport ship departed with its cargo of rescued children and their volunteer escorts. The campaign against the research network had been more successful than anyone had dared to hope, resulting in the liberation of over 200 individuals and the arrest of dozens of researchers, buyers, and facility operators. The final tally was staggering. 6 major research stations shut down, 3 corporate buyers facing criminal charges, 2 military contractors under investigation, and 1 government official quietly removed from office. More importantly, 237 members of Zara's species were now free, along with representatives from 4 other species who had been subjected to similar experimentation. "Father," Zara called from behind him. At 13 months of freedom, she had grown several inches and developed the confident bearing of someone who had faced the worst the galaxy could offer and emerged victorious. "The council is ready for your final report." Marcus turned to follow her into the settlement's main conference facility, where a remarkable group had gathered to hear the conclusion of their crusade. The New Harmony Council included representatives from the Galactic Ethics Board, the Independent Traders Alliance, 3 different military organizations, and a growing coalition of species who had committed to preventing future incidents like the research network. But the most important members of the council were Zara's people themselves, who had formed what they called the Cognitive Alliance, a collective organization dedicated to using their remarkable abilities for peaceful purposes while ensuring their own protection and autonomy. Major Chun greeted Counselor Thorne, a stern woman from the Ethics Board who had become an unexpected ally during the campaign. "Your final report on Operation Family Reunion." Marcus activated the holographic display and began his presentation, though after 6 months of similar briefings, the statistics were burned into his memory. The operation had required coordination between 12 different organizations, involved 47 separate missions across 11 star systems, and had been completed without a single friendly casualty. The success of this operation, Marcus concluded, was due entirely to the exceptional abilities and courage of the individuals we were trying to rescue. They weren't victims waiting to be saved. They were partners in their own liberation. "And the future?" asked Admiral Reese, whose military engineers were already incorporating lessons learned from the children's technological innovations. "What becomes of this alliance you've all formed?" Kresh, now acknowledged as the primary spokesperson for the Cognitive Alliance, stood to address the council. In the months since their escape, he had grown into his leadership role while maintaining the collaborative decision-making style his people preferred. "We intend to establish permanent settlements within the New Harmony system," he announced. "Not as refugees, but as full members of the galactic community. We offer our abilities in service of peaceful exploration, cultural exchange, and technological advancement." "In exchange for what?" Counselor Thorne asked. "Protection for our children, recognition of our rights as sentient beings, and assistance in locating other members of our species who may still be scattered across the galaxy, Zara replied, moving to stand beside Kresh. We also request that Major Chun be granted permanent custody status as our adopted father and official representative. Marcus felt his heart skip at the unexpected announcement. That's not necessary. You're all capable of representing yourselves. Capable, yes, Kresh agreed with a smile. But family relationships transcend mere capability. You chose to protect us when you had no obligation to do so. That makes you our father in every way that matters. The formal adoption proceedings took place the following week, with Marcus officially becoming the legal guardian and representative for 237 individuals ranging in age from 6 to 32 standard years. The paperwork alone was staggering, but Marina Volkov had volunteered her services to navigate the bureaucratic complexities. You realize, she told Marcus as they finalized the legal documents, you're now officially responsible for what amounts to a small city of individuals with abilities that could revolutionize galactic civilization. I try not to think about it too much, Marcus replied. It's easier to just focus on being a good father. The settlement that grew around New Harmony over the following months became a model for interspecies cooperation and peaceful coexistence. The Cognitive Alliance established research partnerships with universities across the galaxy, sharing their insights into language, technology, and cultural adaptation. In return, they received protection, resources, and recognition as full members of the galactic community. Marcus found his role evolving from military commander to community leader, helping to negotiate agreements with visiting researchers, mediating disputes between different species groups, and ensuring that his adopted children maintained their autonomy while participating in the broader galactic community. Father, Zara said one evening as they walked through the settlement's main plaza, do you ever regret responding to that distress signal? Marcus considered the question seriously. His life had changed completely from the lonely existence of a cargo hauler to the complex responsibilities of guiding an entire community. He'd gone from having no family to being responsible for hundreds of individuals who looked to him for guidance and protection. Never, he said finally. Every challenge we've faced has been worth it for the chance to be your father. Even when we accidentally created that diplomatic incident with the Rigelian trade delegation? Especially then. Watching you all navigate that crisis taught me more about diplomacy than 15 years in the military ever did. They paused at the memorial wall that had been erected to honor the researchers who had tried to help before the illegal operations took over. The names of dozens of scientists who had genuinely wanted to assist refugee populations were carved into the stone, along with a simple inscription. They chose to protect rather than exploit. There's something else, Zara said quietly. The long-range sensors have detected another refugee ship entering this system. It's transmitting identification codes that match our original vessels. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. More of your people? Possibly. Or possibly others fleeing similar situations. Either way, they're asking for sanctuary. Marcus smiled, feeling the familiar surge of purpose that had first driven him to respond to a distress signal in empty space. Then, we'd better get ready to welcome them home. As they walked back toward the settlement's main buildings, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since a small blue-skinned girl had looked up at him and asked him to pretend to be her father. The pretense had become reality, and that reality had grown into something that was reshaping the galaxy's understanding of family, cooperation, and the responsibilities that came with power. The refugee ship was still days away, but Marcus was already making mental notes about supply requirements, housing arrangements, and the diplomatic protocols they'd need to follow. It was the kind of complex logistical planning that would have overwhelmed him a year ago, but now felt like natural extensions of his role as father to a community of remarkable individuals. Father, Zara asked as they reached the main residential complex. Yes. Thank you for not pretending anymore. Marcus paused, understanding immediately what she meant. Somewhere during their months together, the role-playing had ended, and the relationship had become genuine. He wasn't pretending to be their father any more than they were pretending to be his children. Thank you for asking me to be your family, he replied. I didn't know I was incomplete until I found all of you. As they entered the building where 237 individuals from across the galaxy had found safety, purpose, and belonging, Marcus realized that the most successful rescue mission in his career had actually been mutual. He'd saved them from captivity and exploitation, but they had saved him from loneliness and the emptiness of a life without meaningful connections. The distress signal that had started everything continued to echo across the galaxy, but now it carried a different message. Instead of calling for help, it announced that safety could be found, that families could be chosen rather than inherited, and that sometimes the most important relationships began with a simple request from someone who needed protection. In the years that followed, the New Harmony settlement became a beacon for refugees, researchers, and anyone seeking proof that different species could not only coexist but thrive together. The Cognitive Alliance grew into a respected voice in galactic politics, advocating for the rights of displaced populations while contributing their unique abilities to peaceful exploration and cultural exchange. And at the center of it all was a former cargo hauler who had learned that responding to a distress signal could lead to discovering a purpose he never knew he needed. Marcus Chun had set out to rescue 18 alien children and ended up finding a family, a community, and a cause that would define the rest of his life. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, but it was also full of opportunities for those brave enough to answer when someone asked for help. Marcus had answered, and in doing so, had discovered that sometimes the most profound journeys began with the simple words, "Please pretend you're my father." Some pretenses, he had learned, were destined to become the most important truths of all. No wonder you knew exactly how to rescue us. You've been training for missions like this your entire adult life. Marcus looked around the room and realized that what had seemed like an impossible challenge suddenly felt manageable. He had the skills, Marina had the intelligence network, and the children had abilities that could make them the most effective infiltration team in the galaxy. For the first time since learning about the research network, he began to believe they could actually succeed. "All right," he said, making his decision. "Let's talk about how to shut down a galaxy-spanning conspiracy and rescue some children. But we do this smart, we do this clean, and nobody gets hurt who doesn't deserve it." As they began planning their campaign against the research network, Marcus reflected on how far he'd come from the lonely cargo hauler who had responded to a distress signal just weeks earlier. He was about to become the field commander of an operation that would either save hundreds of innocent lives or get them all killed in the attempt. Either way, he was exactly where he belonged, protecting his family and fighting for what was right, regardless of the odds. Evacuation protocols will direct them to safety, and there's no evidence connecting them to our escape. Once things settle down, they can claim they were just innocent cargo haulers caught in a technical malfunction. As they jumped to hyperspace, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. For the first time in his adult life, he was exactly where he belonged, with people who needed him not just for his skills, but for himself. Looking back at his passengers, he saw 18 young faces filled with hope and determination rather than fear and despair. Zara moved to stand beside his chair, still wearing the oversized maintenance uniform she'd acquired during the escape. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." "Thank you for asking me to be your father," Marcus replied. "I didn't know how much I needed a family until I found you." The transport ship continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying its unusual family toward an uncertain but hopeful future. Behind them, a research station full of frustrated criminals dealt with system failures that would probably take weeks to fully repair. And somewhere in the galaxy, refugee settlements prepared to welcome 18 remarkable young beings, and the human who had chosen to protect them. Returned to his ship. "After we escape, we want you to stay with us. Not just for transportation, but permanently. We need someone who understands how to navigate human space. And we trust you. You barely know me." "We know enough," the boy said. "You could have walked away when you found Zara. You could have reported this station to the authorities and let them handle it. Instead, you chose to get involved personally. That tells us everything we need to know about your character." As Marcus rode the elevator back to the upper levels, he reflected on how much his life had changed in a single day. This morning, he'd been a lonely cargo hauler with no family and few friends. Tonight, he was planning a jailbreak with 18 alien children who considered him their father figure. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent years avoiding emotional attachments because they made life complicated. Now he was about to risk everything for a group of young aliens who had offered him the one thing he'd always secretly wanted, a family. Whether they all survived the next 24 hours remained to be seen. But Marcus knew that whatever happened, he would never regret the choice he'd made when a small blue-skinned girl had looked up at him and asked him to pretend to be her father. Some roles, he realized, didn't require pretending at all. Marcus found himself hoping that his decision to help Zara wouldn't end up dooming humanity to face an enemy unlike anything they'd ever encountered. But looking at the brave young girl who'd asked him to be her father, he knew he'd made the only choice he could live with. The real test would come when they reached the others, and Marcus discovered whether Zara's trust in him was shared by the rest of her people. The future of human-alien relations might depend on how well he could convince a group of traumatized refugees that not all humans were their enemies. As they moved deeper into the station, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to become part of something that would change the galaxy forever. The question was whether that change would bring peace or war, understanding or conflict. All he knew for certain was that he wouldn't abandon Zara or her people, no matter what the consequences might be. The bad scientists might be coming back, as Zara had warned. But they would find that their prisoners now had a protector, and Marcus Chun had never been very good at backing down from a fight, especially when children were involved. Even if those children happened to possess abilities that could reshape the balance of power in the known galaxy.